So we have an exercise we're going to do to help us be sustainability, to absorb the concepts that we had. But first, we wanted to just open it up a little bit for questions because people didn't have a chance to do that, and we couldn't see each other, and it's important to stay connected. And I think Sarah James is with us too, and she wrote the guidelines for the American Planning Association's guidelines for sustainability, which were based on the same principles. So I see your face, Sarah. So Sarah's also here as an expert. And if people have any questions or thoughts, it's fine to do that a little bit now and before we get started. Or we can also just get started if people would rather do that. Give it like 10 seconds more to let everybody settle and decide whether you have anything, and if not. I would ask, actually, one of the questions in the chat that maybe Sarah or Cynthia could answer is why, somebody asked, why do we see so many eco-municipalities in Wisconsin? And Sarah, you're on mute. Do you want to answer that, or Cynthia?
Cindy, you can answer it.
Cindy, I think you're muted.
Okay, while Cindy's unmuting, as Cindy mentioned in her talk, we did a book tour. We spent a lot, did several workshops in Wisconsin, but we also had some wonderful statewide partners, the 1,000 Friends of Wisconsin and the University of Wisconsin County Extension. And they did a remarkable job of spreading the word about eco-municipalities through the state. And I would say a lot of the credit for the large number of eco-municipalities in Wisconsin goes to them.
Could you either Cindy or Sarah address the question about why in Cambridge? That was another chat question. There hasn't been somebody said that the municipality was not accepting or wanting to move towards becoming, moving in, I don't know, sustainability planning direction, or you would know better. But
yeah, I live in Cambridge. Henrietta Davis, who was our former mayor and councilwoman, was actually very interested in Cambridge moving in this direction. And I did a talk, and the short answer is I don't really know why, but Cambridge, many communities that have already started in a sustainability direction or climate change direction often feel that that's what they want to stick with. And Cambridge, as everybody here probably knows, has been very active in climate change and working to reduce emissions. And perhaps that's the reason why they felt they were already going in the right direction.
Great. That's all I remember from the chat that we hadn't answered. Is there, I suppose people will chime in if they have more that they want to say. So Cindy, do you want to get started?
Sure. Can you hear me now? I dispensed with my headset. So is it working?
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, terrific. All right, thank you. I will share my screen.
Can I say one thing as you're doing that, which is, it occurred to me, just to be clear, all the examples that we gave, those are people who are working in the direction. We say this is a compass, these guidelines are a compass. When we have a definition of what sustainable is, we work towards it. It doesn't mean that these are perfect, and some of us may do a better job, So there can be drawbacks to particular actions, but we want to know that it's in that direction. And if we know where we're going and we have a compass, it's a lot easier to get there. So keep that in mind as we do this.
Thank you, Steve. And actually, that's a fantastic lead-in for something I had top of mind from the last panel and from the discussion throughout the day, which is that we are learning always and and that's why we're here at this conference. So I'm finding ways that the things I'm hearing today synergize with the work we're doing, and I'm thankful for that. And I actually reflected too on John Burkhart's in the last panel's comment that they, as an organization, went into sort of a self-reflection period of what worked and what didn't. We're kind of in that period now, which is a listening and learning and getting ready to move forward in some new ways based on what we learned. So thank you everyone for what you're sharing, and we invite that those kinds of questions and input throughout. So as Steve said, we have an exercise planned. The idea being to give us a chance to do something hands-on to try to bring this model to life a little bit and imagine one way that you might be able to, if you wanted to share, if one wanted to share this information in a group or community. I have used this method and it has worked pretty well, which is putting, first of all, a reminder of sort of a statement of what the overall holistic model is, the systems-based model. This statement here was an interpretation again by Sustain Dane, one of the nonprofits in Wisconsin that has been doing this work. And so we'll sort of use that as a touchstone and then see across the top here the 4 guiding objectives, 1, 2, 3, and 4 stated there. Then what we have is down the left, an invitation to the group here, or if I were in a room in a community, I would invite the people in the community to say, what actions, here's the question in the upper left corner, what possible actions or projects would align with one or more of these guiding objectives? I need to put a question mark in there. And that gives us a chance to think about, well, how could we bring this to life? And so I started us with a couple of sample examples. So we'll I invite people to participate verbally and say, can someone suggest where you might plot? If you were going to say, where do green roofs fall among these 4 guiding objectives? Which one of the guiding objectives does that align with or help to meet? Can someone make a guess? You look at the guiding objectives. And it might be kind of a trick question because, as I did say in the presentation, one of these guiding objectives talks about reducing dependence or stopping harmful activities, but this putting in a green roof is a restorative. So it's kind of like building on that and not just stopping the harmful activity, but actually doing something that's restorative. Does that help?
In terms of, if we think in terms of heat islands,
Yeah.
we were talking about, does that, and then if we have less heat, what does that do in terms of cooling that we need, right?
Well, that's number 3.
Very good.
Number
That's
3.
the correct answer. So I will highlight that.
But what if you had enough of these that you didn't need to cool?
Oops, not orange. That's not the right color. It's green.
If you didn't need as much cooling, would that make a difference?
No, I'm just shaking my head. You can't have too many.
Yeah, so that might make a difference. Yeah, Miriam.
Yeah, I was thinking it's number 1 for sure because of reducing dependence on any need for cooling, and then cooling often uses chemical substances in it too. So I was going to say 1 and 2 before number 3.
Beautiful.
Sure.
Is there one correct answer? I mean, somebody said number 3. Oh, that's the correct answer, but isn't it all of those?
Some of this is and.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes,
And
and
you said number 2 also, right?
that's very advanced response. We were planning to get to that point where we ask the question, do any of these meet more than one? And yes, that's a very good point. This one does meet more than one of the objectives.
Has anyone ever been on a green roof that you found beautiful or that did anything for you as a human being?
Mm-hmm.
So is there an objective that could be fulfilled by that?
Oh yeah, leisure and recreation, all the stuff in number 4.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, I live in a very dense urban area on the 10th floor, and I look out over all these roofs, and all the time I'm thinking, why aren't there decks out there with plants or green roofs or at least some solar power?
Right, absolutely. Absolutely, thank you.
And number 2, we've had also. Cindy?
Oh, 2 as well, because we're not using some kind of chemical or synthetic materials.
For cooling.
Oh, okay.
In Boston, there's a group called Green City Growers, and I believe they're doing roof gardens also.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
So if you're thinking about what you do at home or in your community, you can easily see how if you keep these things in mind all of a sudden, instead of doing one thing, if you do multiple things all at once, then you're the systems planner, in your life. When our communities are doing it, it's like the best return on investment, because sometimes it's just one little tweak. And in Sweden, there was a place that we went to where they had to deal with wastewater, and somebody designed, it was designed in a way where it came through this beautiful plantings that removed and filtered out the waste. And they thought, how could we bring love here?
Mm-hmm.
And it was so beautiful that people would want to come to this basically waste treatment area to hang out and be among these beautiful plants. So, this is what holistic, planning can do.
Right. And the idea also is if you have a visual that's like this, where you can clearly see which projects or actions fulfill the most of the 4 guiding objectives most holistically, then that is one way to consider prioritizing. What do I do first? Well, which one of these moves me closer to being in harmony with nature and with each other? It would be one that has all 4 cells highlighted in green. So I think this group is pretty savvy. I am going to,
Can we do more? These were good, I think.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, let's do the next one, solar panels. What are some thoughts in a neighborhood across those roofs?
Obviously 1.
Yes, that's the primary that we had in mind. Are there others for solar panels?
I would say 4 because solar energy is distributed and it helps neighborhood resilience and control, because you're not depending on a centralized large utility to supply something that you need.
Interesting. That's beautiful.
Yeah, fantastic.
Interesting perspective.
Resiliency adds protection, and solar panels mean freedom.
I can combine that with batteries.
Uh-huh.
There's quite a lot of capability, even sharing energy with your neighbor, perhaps. It's
Beautiful.
If trees were cut down so that the solar panels would not be shaded, that would not meet, as one of my neighbors did last year, that would not meet system condition, the guiding principle number 3.
That's a good point, Sarah. So even if a community decided to do this project, it's good to keep in mind that even though it may not be highlighted as green under 3, we always need to be thinking about all 4 guiding objectives, and always, any project we do, the idea is, that's the idea of this systems view, is to not just think in a silo, but think as a whole. and remember to continue to honor those other objectives, including number 3, like Sarah was saying.
Thanks, Cindy. As a compass for us, and based on what Sarah just said, you know, that's one place we can do better. So how do we do it better? How do we do it so we get all 4 of these things covered? And when we look for, you know, you guys can read what what Max Neef wrote, you know, and he said that all of these needs here that Cindy listed, rather than Maslow's sort of pyramid, you know, hierarchy, although we used the word hierarchy earlier, he says that we need all of these to be fulfilled as human beings. Like, you can't have a diet where you don't have certain vitamins in it, or nutritionally, you know, you starve. It's like, you can't just say, oh, we don't need all of that. Here, he's making the assertion that human beings need all of these, that every human has these needs, and that they're finite. And you can't, if you don't have love, you're not going to get it by having a second SUV or a third. I mean, not necessarily directly getting that. So we try to fill our needs in the US by, or many of us, you know, have been taught to fill our needs through materialism, but that doesn't do it. It doesn't satisfy them. So to be a really good sustainability planner in your life and in your world, you think about how can we really satisfy all of these. You know, if we can be successful in some of the things that we put together where we satisfy all of these needs, like, you know, I think about a farmer's market, you know, in a way, in terms of these needs, you know, and when you go there, you feel, what do you experience? You know, if it's a local farmer's market, do you have a sense of belonging? You know, is there a sense of connection and affection? And is there, you know, the freedom because it's local and it's taking care of other stuff? I mean, you can just go down the list. So if you're trying to be creative and stuff and you forget one of these, maybe it's the vitamin D that you're not getting in your diet, the equivalent. So, you know, this is a really advanced group, but if this tool helps you in your planning, you know, it can be so transformative and such an efficient use of your time and resource. Mayim, your hand was up. You're muted.
Sorry, it's Mayim. I often look at you twice, Steve, because you look so much like another friend in this movement who's here too. Oh, what was I going to say? Oh, like this chart alone is so good. I forget what we were told about. Are we going to be able to get some of these materials from you? Are they going to be sent out? I would love to have like this chart and some of your other stuff.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, before we go, we can share email addresses.
Okay.
I have a question. This is Rachel. I'm in my head, I keep trying to think of the vehicles that will make these things happen. Obviously, it runs from the individual, but then who else and how does one make it happen? In our case, we've used City Hall quite a bit. So we go from individuals. We actually sometimes pick out who we'd like to have on as a councillor, and then we ask them if they are in agreement with these kind of objectives. But there must be others. And what do they do in Sweden around getting word out and moving people's hearts and actions?
Sarah, can you share about your experience with publishing your book and how people responded by learning in your book and how they worked with municipalities as individuals?
Sure. I just want to say my internet connection was out while Rachel's was asking her question. So if I don't answer it, let me know. Is the question kind of how you get things going?
From
Yes,
individuals?
what vehicles and channels do you use?
Well, in Sweden, they use the term fire soul to describe someone who had a burning interest in sustainable development and was willing to work hard to make it happen. And that's pretty much how every eco-municipality we're aware of got started. It started really with just 1 or 2 people thinking that this was a great idea for their community, and then who worked hard to convince other people in their community, including people in their municipal or county government, such as the elected officials, and then continued to work to spread the word throughout the community and to persuade the elected officials to adopt these principles as guiding policy. That's the short answer.
In Lawrenceville, New Jersey, one of the fire cells there, Ralph, that's not far from Philly, he got excited about this, and he got the mayor interested, and but he also got people, fellow community members interested. So they worked on 2 tracks. They worked with the municipality, and then they worked with all sorts of individuals, the schools there, everything. Sarah did a training there. I don't know if everyone was with you. And then a year later, everybody reconvened who had been at the training. And I was there, and Ralph asked people what they had done. And they went through the room, and people were sharing stuff, like amazing things. And at the end, he said, is anybody here aware of all that had gone on? Nobody was aware of all that had gone on, which was just so thrilling to see, like this. And then to have the municipality, that other track, adopt these principles. And the mayor then went on to start a municipal sustainability network in New Jersey, which has, I can't remember how many municipalities, maybe Sarah knows, but I mean, it was dozens and dozens who are then also working. They don't call themselves Eco-Municipalities, but they're working in the same direction.
Yeah, they didn't, Sustainable Jersey, it's a state certification program for sustainable communities, and they don't they don't use these 4 principles. They have a whole roster of ones they develop themselves, but they have gotten I think over 300 communities or municipalities in New Jersey to move in a sustainable direction, which is great.
Could you give the title of the book again?
The book we wrote?
Yeah.
The Natural Step for Communities, How Cities and Towns Can Change to Sustainable Action.
Super, thanks.
I have a comment.
Please.
Oh, Barbara.
Barbara, I saw myself in one of the pictures. I was part of the arranging the tour that you participate at time. I would like to say that I've been working with with the system conditions for such a long time, but I really like this exercise. I learned something new today. Thank you. But I also like to comment that I often like to go start the fundamental needs as a starting point. This is our way to get rich. And we can get, in plural, as we say, rikedomar, we say in Swedish. I don't know how you say it in your language. But then you say that, this activity or actions, what kind of human needs does it satisfy?
Right.
And then you say, as you said, you had the other way perspective. But if you start with the fundamental needs, you can say that, this action is really hitting all the 9 fundamental needs. How rich are we,
Sure.
And then you say, how do we do this? How do we act on this without violating 1, 2, 3?
Right. Right.
That's gorgeous.
It is.
One of the challenges is how to communicate complexity to people, sometimes in a short amount of time so that they get it. And we've all had experiences of trying and having people glaze over or whatever. So I think, you make a great comment, and, we'd all appreciate feedback about how you guys have communicated things that matter to you that are complex, and so that other people get it, whether it's science or a complex idea. What's the best way to reach people, sometimes in a short amount of time, so that they really get it?
And the conclusion is not always, you do need material things like food, fresh air and water. But most of these fundamental needs you can satisfy without a dollar or a crown or any metal or anything, you know.
Right.
So I think that's also, and we in Sweden, we don't think like that, you know, where can I buy it, you know, or something like that. But it's really a new way of thinking, and I love it.
Thank you.
I love it too. Thank you, Barbara. So wonderful to have you here. I don't know if everyone realizes Barbara is with us directly from Sweden.
Yay. And Cindy, do you want to share something about your relationship with Sweden and your life?
Sure. Just personally, I thought about sharing in our presentation that, and kind of as Barbara alludes to, Swedish culture is very hard and probably fertile ground, so to speak, for this movement. It's not a surprise that it grew up there. They have the concept of lagom, which many people have probably heard or may have heard of, which I've heard it defined different ways, but one way I've heard it defined as only take as much as you need. And that has something to do with the guiding objective number 4, what do I need? And thinking about not taking more than I need so that there's enough for others. So that's central to Swedish culture, and that's only one of many, many things that draws me personally to Sweden. It's a lovely place in general. Beautiful language, beautiful culture, very close connection with nature. There's a lot of education from a young age about their nature schools, and it's just part of the fabric of their culture. So being at the tour, you're immersed not only in what you're learning in these theories and these approaches, but you're also immersed in that culture. And I personally I don't know, Steve, if this is what you're driving at, but I am planning to ultimately move there. But I'm so in love with the culture and place, but I'm planning to continue this work and work with people in the US and North America to continue to share this information and have an exchange. Is that what you were getting at, Steve?
Yeah. It changed your whole life. You're moving. You were ready to go before this pandemic.
Right. The pandemic has put a little pause, but that's fine. There are always things to do right where we are. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, finish, please, your thought.
I was just going to say, people have asked both in our presentation and here about more information, maybe a book, or some people were asking about if they wanted to go on the tour, if they just wanted to engage in conversation. I want to share this slide because we didn't get a chance to in the presentation. This is our contact information. We welcome hearing from you with questions or ideas. And
you know what? I can type it in the chat too.
Can people not see it? Oh yeah, that's good. Then
they have to unshare, so it's okay.
They can copy and paste. Oh, I have to unshare, stop share.
Why don't we stay where you are and I'll just type it.
Oops.
And then I think it would pay to do a little more of these, because based on what Barbara just said about, focusing on these human needs, but, enriching ourselves that way and really looking from that, because we could spend a lot more time on that. And apparently our elected officials could too. Sure.
Well, just looking at the time, how much time we originally wanted to go, we thought, up to an hour. I don't know when we started, but is it about 10 or so minutes left?
Yeah, maybe till 2:30.
Okay, so I'm happy to do that. That sounds good. So we had 2 other examples here. The next one was a project that is a communications campaign educating people about what fair trade is. So again, looking at Barbara's point about these 9 basic human needs that are listed over here. Oops, I gave the answer away.
Well, which ones are covered in there?
Sure.
Folks, like looking at these, which of these, which are covered, and if they're not, how might you cover them? Is there a way
Right.
you might want to do that?
So yeah, which of the guiding objectives does this engage? One or more.
You know, and you can see a lot has to do with how you do it.
Right. True. True.
So is there any like caring or love in a communications campaign about fair trade? How could
Well, the whole idea of sharing and only taking what you need in our present situation where the world in a funny way is one because of the virus, then sharing becomes critical to our survival.
Right. 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 Agreed. So,
how does it relate to you know, in participation we can see understanding?
sure. So we, maybe I can say we presented this example as one that most directly relates with the fourth condition here. I did that wrong. The fourth objective, meeting needs fairly and efficiently, because we're educating people about fair trade. But to Steve's point, how we engage that education, and to Barbara's point, we can, with any action that we have down the left, we can always look at how can we meet as many of these needs as possible in this action, so we could communicate with love, for example, as Steve said. So that's one way to think about it. Would this or could this project align with any of the other guiding objectives kind of directly, or is there some way it might be related?
The drive for money at the moment just seems like running in the opposite direction, and to turn that process into a loving one is a big stretch and obviously would be wonderful. But the people that actually do this work, it's all about profit and doing the best and getting as much as you can and all that. So this is a big step. This would be really hard to do.
It would be.
You know, little city councils, you know, they're hardly dealing with fair trade. Anyhow, Wall Street might be.
There are fair trade cities now. You know, in outside of Philly, there's a fair trade city. Media, PA, is the first fair trade city in the country, and the person who got that started, I think, started this Untours Foundation, and used to ride his bicycle to work, so he didn't need a car, and he made money, and he gave it all away to this foundation, and they just support all different kinds of local entrepreneurs and fair trade people. When I went to the fundraiser for it, there was so much love in the room. It was unbelievable, you know. And then to have these products like cocoa butter stuff, or things from Haiti, you know, where people were really struggling, and these beautiful products that were natural and organic, and gave them to my daughter to look in her eyes when she smelled this and used this. There was so much love there.
How can one access that you've just said? What could one look up?
Media Pennsylvania, and also Untours Foundation.
Can you write that in the chat so that we know how to spell it, Steve, please?
Sure.
While Steve's doing that, I just want to say that authentic fair trade farmers, and there's a lot of non-authentic, which is another subject, but authentic fair trade farmers are actually climate heroes, because they're using organic agriculture practices which don't use synthetic chemicals. They're growing shade-grown coffee and tea. So they're meeting number 3. They're rebuilding the soil. including the important microbes that sequester carbon. So they're meeting number one, and so they're meeting number 1, 2, and 3, in addition to number 4. But the key word here in talking about fair trade is authentic, because there are certification organizations such as Fairtrade USA that actually have certified Nestle's, an agribusiness, as fair trade. So you have to be careful here.
Right, true.
Certainly, fair trade, if it's truly fair trade chocolate, for example, that alone, that is so connected to freedom and slavery, within Africa. And so a lot has to do with how we do it. But this is a great group,
Yes.
thinking about stuff. It's fantastic to do this. And imagine if you had people collaborating with you on this, in your businesses and in your city councils, etc. What you could accomplish in terms of getting things done if you had this basic foundational understanding.
Sure. And Steve, actually, I just realized that the last 2 examples we have here are some of the examples we've already shared are more macro economic, like economics or development across an economy or a community. The next 2 are more maybe at the household or smaller neighborhood level. One is sharing information about non-chemical cleaning products or ways of cleaning your home without chemicals. So I'm going to push this down so that we can see the header. Can you see the header?
It's underneath from the next page. So if you scroll up a little bit, we can see.
Here, I actually scrolled down, or I pushed it down. So here we are.
Thanks.
Sure. So this one and the next one we'll get to is powerful too, community gardens. But so part of the beauty of what we saw in Sweden and part of the power of this is, and like Steve alluded to, it doesn't have to be an expensive platinum green building that we do, or any even infrastructure. It can be something very simple, like educating people about how they can use baking soda as an alternative to a toxic abrasive powder. So for this, just quickly, as before we wrap up, any thoughts on where this project would, which of the columns lights up for this project?
Well, definitely number 2.
Yep, that was the idea. That was the primary. Yep, exactly. And again, the word sharing is key.
That's a hint for number 4.
Yep. Very good.
And it could be done, where combined other things like it, we can be creative. In Philly, we did a clothing swap in a school in a poor neighborhood, and at the same time, we also had there were people who were doing nature and environmental work, and they were using that as an opportunity to also share ideas with people. So it served a lot of multiple purposes at the same time.
Right. Okay. Likewise, a community organic garden. Where would that, which of the guiding objectives does that help align us with?
Number 1.
All of them.
All of them.
Yeah,
Really.
that's
Number
the
2.
idea. This is one of those good ones.
Number 3.
Yep,
Number 4.
yep.
Probably 5 as well.
I was part of one, and exciting was Tuesday at 5 o'clock when a number of us would go harvest from our own gardens, harvest from the community garden that was just set aside for people without food, and from each other's. And we got like £1,000 produce a year that went to people who didn't have food.
That's so beautiful. Absolutely.
Including mothers and babies. One mother came before she had the baby and after she had her baby.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm so happy to see there's a trend right now with everyone sequestered at home to
garden.
establish gardens again in your backyard and in the community. Absolutely.
One thought I have about food is, because of what's going on now, and because a lot of our food comes from thousands of miles away, trucked by lorries, I'm British, that we need more organic food and hoop houses, etc., around cities, so that people could participate, get the food, it would be healthier, it would be all organic, none of the toxins. One of the things being said these days is that our food is grown so badly that it's affecting our health if it's not organic.
Right.
So much of it, if you live on the East Coast, so much of it comes from, it's trucked across the country.
Exactly.
Or flown in from other parts of the world. So
it's crazy.
It's a great point you're making about, local resilience. So, again, when we think about eco-municipalities and these ideas, it's so much about local resilience on a level where any of us can potentially change the game.
Do something, yeah.
So it's the optimal way to, think globally and act locally.
Right, right.
And it's fun.
It is fun. That's exactly right. It's fun and beautiful and joyful, right, and nourishing.
I just planted potatoes yesterday in our garden, so people could do things in their gardens. They don't just have to be lawns. They can nurture people and make them happy.
Right, right, absolutely.
I've got a quick question. Do you ever use the suggestions in the drawdown book by Paul Hawken that could fit into these 4 objectives?
Oh, fantastic point. And Paul Hawken was responsible with Peter Senge for bringing over these principles to the U.S. initially.
Great.
Thanks.
The drawdown book, I hadn't, Steve, sounds like you're familiar with it. I want to make sure we remember.
Yeah, it's great. There are all these different ways. It's a systematic approach, right? Because it sees how things are connected. Like education for girls would have a huge impact in terms of climate. Those sort of things that, it doesn't, how does that relate? But you can do the ... and see.
I'd like to comment on those fundamental needs correlated to the discussion we had with the young people. Because we were talking about diversity of people, in our group and in all the groups we are trying to create. And I think that we need to talk about diversity of people too.
Right.
For equity, equality, nationality, the way you can transport yourself and everything. Because and that's it's participation in Manfred's language. It's so important, but I think that's a cue to increase all the others' fundamental needs.
Participation?
No, the diversity of the people, diversity of the group will increase all the other needs. The satisfaction, from the other needs. They will increase everything. Creativity, leisure, affection of love, security, even you more secure with other kinds of people. And it was just a comment, because I thought about that when we talked about if it's are there more girls or boys, and
absolutely,
and the color of our group, and
the diversity of ages too. We saw some beautiful examples of Sweden of multi-generational projects, intentionally bringing in people of all ages to work together.
I worked in some local groups, and they had this, what do you say, quotation, and it was age. You know, it was, we have it in gender sometimes, you know, you have to have 50, 40, 60 we talk about, but they talk about ages in the groups.
Wonderful. Thank you, Barbara. Good point. Diversity.
Then you have to include children too.
Yes.
Of course, they are, but you know, you're not allowed to vote for a border with only one age group.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
This is, you know, and it speaks to the strength of sort of the systems thinking that it can withstand different perspectives. And not just that, but it acknowledges that we're stronger and we have a better chance of getting where we need to go with different perspectives. So things like culture that we haven't really talked about, you know, a lot of this is about culture change and also acknowledging cultures and local cultures and the richness that we have in that. You know, that's a fundamental, hugely important thing, you know, probably in your own communities when you feel connected to something that may have something to do with, you know, your identity with the local culture or the places in your life that really feel important where there are other people. You know, think about whether there's a cultural aspect to that, you know, so that some of this work has this impacts and affirms the, you know, the cultures that are important to us, which is nice if you're thinking about environment, you know, to actually, these human needs pieces, as Barbara said, are so fundamental and intertwined.
Well,
We maybe need some better words. Sustainability does not turn me on. I tend to think that people just want to keep things as they are, nice and safe, and not get bothered and not get the sea wash over them and so on. We just need a better word. I like fire souls, but
yeah, that language has carried over from when the eco-municipalities were first founded, and it's a good point. It's something, like I said, we're in a reflective time right now, and we're thinking a lot and having discussions about what language is best in this new time, in the time we're in now that we've come all this way since the 80s. So
and
yes.
lots of activists are now saying this is the moment. We have to grab this chance. Where it's gone quiet, where we've been doing our gardens, where we wish we could hug other people, etc.
Maybe with this, you know, with this sort of way of thinking, we can be a little bit better at figuring out how to support and connect each other in the work. The work of the activists is, you know, and any of our activism is so critical, but activism by itself without planning, you know, in doing these things, we can't succeed. So again, I think we all learned, you know, it's not this or this, it's this and this. This is really, there's so much inclusivity and systems thinking. Let's get as good as we can be, possibly working together.
And Steve, that's I think a great thought, possibly to help us wind up, be the best we can be and all participate. We're at our hour now. Are there any other top of mind questions or comments? We really do invite and welcome hearing from you. So I think Steve shared our contact information in the chat. And it's been beautiful participating in this conference and learning what other people are doing. So thank you for that. And Steve, I don't know, you have some wind up words?
Yeah, thank you. I've learned a lot from all of you, and it's great. It's fantastic to be with people, you know, who are thinking so well about creating a future together. So thank you all.
Can you repeat the contact info?
Yeah, I have it. If you look in the chat room,
I always have difficulty finding the chat room.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
You see it on the screen? I just shared it again.
It's Cynthia Contie, Cynthia, C-Y-N-T-I-A.
THIA.
C-Y-N-T-H-I-A, Cynthia, and continuing in the same C-O-N-T-I-E, Cynthia Contie
At Gmail.
.com.
At
Gmail.
email?
Gmail.
Gmail.
Yeah.
.com.
I have a last comment if you
Sure.
have the time. You know, I have trouble to follow your vocabulary that you use in US, and that's why I'm here. I try to understand what you are doing. But so we eat sustainability for breakfast, so we can't change it in Sweden. But one of the things is that what we found out working with other countries is that if we are talking about the system conditions, we don't save system conditions, you know, but we are talking about the concept of system conditions. We have a common language there.
Right.
And it's regardless of what kind of label we have on this.
Right.
Yes, Torbjörn says it's this is very obvious to many native peoples, these concepts. I mean, it's not, you don't have to do a long presentation on PowerPoint. They just live it and get it. Sort of like, you know, the 7th generation